In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to set up a site in Dreamweaver and then also how to set up the remote site, which is going to utilize the web server that we are utilizing for the course. So the first thing we need to do is to go ahead and open up Macromedia Dreamweaver, and once you get that open, you're going to go up to the menu bar, and on the menu bar go ahead and open up the site menu. From the site menu, choose Manage Sites. That brings open the Manage Sites dialog box where all of our previously created sites are listed. We're going to create a new site, so we're going to move over to the right here and very top button, click on the New button, which allows us to choose between creating a new site or a new FTP connection. Site is a better choice because it keeps track of the links in the various pages for us, and it's a little bit more of a smart way of doing things. Okay, so when we get to the site definition, you have two tabs, and if you're in the default configuration of Dreamweaver, you're probably looking at the Basic tab right now, and this is fine. This takes you through on a step-by-step basis, kind of like a Microsoft Wizard. But I'm going to demonstrate this through the Advanced tab, which is just quicker, more efficient. Go ahead and click on that Advanced tab, and you see the categories listed to the left here. As we select a category on the left, it changes what is displayed on the right. So we'll start with the local info category. First thing we want to do is we want to name our site, and I'm going to call this site the Mul 218 site. And then we have to identify where our local files are located. So understand now that you're actually going to have two sets of files. You'll keep one set of files on your local computer, which will identify that folder here, and then in a moment we will set up the remote info, which will identify the folder on the web server that we set up for the course. So right now when you click on your folder, I would suggest that you just simply go to My Documents. Inside of My Documents, you should have a subfolder called My Webs, and just create a new folder inside of there. So create a new Mul 218 folder, and then select it, because that is going to be the folder then where we're going to locally save our web files. So the name of our site is here, the path to the site is here. Now you might have noticed when I was inside of my Mul 218 folder, it showed a subfolder of images. Again, I have previously created that. You'll need to do that on your end, because you need to list that folder, identify the location of that folder in this next entry area. So I'm going to navigate again to My Documents, and normally what I do is I copy and paste actually from the previous entry area, but just for demonstration purposes, we'll go to My Documents again, My Webs, the Mul 218 folder, there's the images subdirectory, we'll select it. So that's the path listed here now. Now the actual URL that we want to use for the website is what we want to put in here for our HTTP address. And so for this course, it's going to be ciw.msjc.edu/mul218, and then you want to put in the name of the folder that you created on the FTP server. So I put in Bill Gates. You might recall in the video where I demonstrated using the course server, I created a folder on the through the FTP using the name Bill Gates, and so that's the folder I'm identifying now as where our files will be once we're done with all this, and when users come to our website, where will they actually retrieve the files from. And so I want to identify that folder on that FTP server, the one we're using for the course. Okay. So again, we've named the site, we've listed the two local folders here where we're going to keep our duplicate set of files. We've put in the correct URL that points to our files there on the internet. Now what we want to do is go to the remote info, and well, you won't get this error. It's telling me that I've actually created a website now that uses the same folder as another website I created previously. Obviously I was practicing this demo, and I just renamed that old site there, so that's why that shows up. Alright, so we're on the remote info selection now. The first choice is the access choice. How are we going to access the remote system? Well, you probably have already guessed. We're going to use FTP. The IP address is 207.233.9.22. We had identified that number for you earlier. Now that takes you directly to the student websites folder. For the host directory, you want to put in the directory name that you created. So again, I put in Bill Gates as the name of the folder that I was going to be using. Now to log in, we use the account that was created for you. Again, that's your first name and your last name. And then the password, which is MUL218, MUL218, all lowercase. Now let's test it. Let's make sure we can make the connection to the FTP server. That's a good sound. That means we have successfully connected to our FTP server. So that means that we've identified the IP address correctly, we've put in the correct login, and we've put in the correct password. Now also I like to, as I modify files locally, in the local folder, whenever changes I make to those files, I like to have them automatically uploaded for me to the server. Since this is not a live server, that doesn't hurt at this point. If this was a live server, I would not make that choice. But this is just a practice server. So it just expedites things. As you make changes locally, those changes get reflected in the documents on the remote server as well, automatically for you. You don't have to worry about it, and we don't need any check-in or check-out. You're the only one working on these files. Now the last thing is the testing server. Here we're identifying the type of web server that we're using. So the server model that we're using is ASP. That's the Microsoft Active Server Pages. That's a component that's, remember, added on to our web server. We showed you that in the first video. And then the type of scripting language that we'll be using in our pages will be JavaScript. The type of access for the testing server, which is the remote server, is through FTP. Now this is a difference between the other video. This is a difference between the other video that I have here as far as setting up sites in Macromedia. There I had you select local, and that was for the students that were locally hosting their own web server. Remember, this video is for those of you that are connecting to the web server that we provided for you. And the only way to access that is through FTP. So that's the choice for access. Should then copy the IP address, should automatically put in your host directory, your login information. Again, test the connection, make sure it's working correctly, and it does. And then the final thing is we need to change the URL down here. This should read cis.msjc.edu and then /MUL218. That's the folder that contains all of the student folders, and then of course the last thing is your actual folder name is where your files are located. So if this is working, once we click OK, it gives us the new site. Remember, in our Manage Sites listing here is where all our sites are. So we just created a new one. There is the new one already selected for us. We just simply click Done. And then this is a file that I had created previously in that folder. So that shows that I'm making the connection through Dreamweaver correctly. Then we want to check and see if we can get to that web page that we have created there. And the URL on that's going to be cis.msjc.edu/mul218, and then your first name, last name, the name of the folder that you created there. Mine was Bill Gates. Press enter, and it should pick up the default page in the directory. It does. It displays. Looks like things are working fine so far.